Who am I? My name's Paul, obviously. I spent more than a decade in law enforcement. I was in a department called the Lee County Sheriff's Office in Fort Myers, Florida, on the Gulf Coast. Probably most famous these days for where Ian hit a couple years ago, and then we had a couple hurricanes last year. My parents still live down there, and my dad was a police officer for nearly 40 years before he retired. And my nephew, my sister's eldest son, is works in law enforcement now for Charlotte County, which is a little bit north of that. My specialized training, I was trained by the FBI in video forensics. My background prior to becoming law enforcement was working in journalism. I was a TV news producer for several years and then worked on other things, industrials, kind of like what Tony does um, when he's not being a writer or whatever. Um, and then I found a way to transition from that into law enforcement when there was an opening at the agency my dad was working at. Was there first as a civilian for about 6 months before I finished the academy and then became a full, pardon me, law enforcement officer. But again, my specialty was video forensics. So I would go to crime scenes and pull the surveillance footage or go around to other businesses and see if they had footage we could use, or go through and literally sit there and just stare at video screens for hours trying to find a particular car come through or whatever. Because unlike what you see on television, a lot of those cameras and systems are not portable. They aren't something you can just, oh, I'll just take this and go. Although when I started, it was mostly on VHS tape, transitioning to digital. And then on digital, though, it was even harder because a lot of times they were solid state machines. So there was no way to put a drive in there or even put a CD in there and get images out. So you'd end up taking pictures with your cell phone. When we were able to take pictures with our cell phone, I go back to when we had pagers, um, just to give you some history there. So I spent a decade as a journalist and a playwright before becoming a law enforcement. And while bridging that, while I was in law enforcement and even before, I spent 20 years as an actor on stage. I did community theater, I did local touring stuff. And for 15 years, I did a murder mystery dinner theater train. So we were actually acting on the train while people were eating, and it was a lot of fun, although those weren't necessarily the most compelling scripts that you would see out there. And then a couple of years ago, I started Hollywood Police Academy. I had originally looked at doing it um, when the right before the pandemic hit, and then pandemic hit, and everything shut down, so I wasn't able to do in-person things, and had to try and figure out some other ways to go about things. As far as what we're discussing today, I want to start with a caveat. Uh, I believe very strongly that the best way to portray a law enforcement officer, to write a law enforcement officer, to show a law enforcement officer on film is to do it as accurately as possible. However, that doesn't always work. You are always going to have situations where the emotional journey needs to happen, and there needs to be something that isn't going to quite fit with that. You are working in a collaborative medium. I'm assuming you guys are all film and television. I didn't really ask. But even plays, everything is collaboration. So I'm going to give you the information and you can use it however you would like. But if you're in a situation where you're working with someone else who has a vision, my best suggestion is, and this is what I do when I'm on set. Okay, do it your way. If we have time, can we try it this way? Because this is what I know, or this is what I've learned, and I think this might be better. And a lot of times, the more accurate portrayal is a better portrayal, and it actually serves the story better because it's something that the original writer or filmmaker hadn't even thought of because they don't have the experience. And coming to them and going, "Well, I think we should handcuff him this way," and they go, "Oh, okay, that would be interesting." Um, a couple years ago, 2021, I worked on a documentary that involved reenactments called Our Father on Netflix. And uh, when we got ready to do the scene that I was in, the bad guy came out and they were going to test to check his DNA, and he's carrying a firearm on him. And I'm like, why is he still holding a weapon? And the director's like, well, wait, why? She's because she had heard that I was had former law enforcement. She's like, what? And I said, well, no, for the safety of the person swabbing him and the lawyer here as well as myself, he would not. He has the right to have the weapon, but he doesn't have the right to hold on to the weapon the whole time. She's like, oh, okay, well, let's do it this way. Let's rearrange that. And so we did the scene that way, and it worked better for the scene for me to disarm him, and then he was swabbed, and it didn't look glaringly bad to law enforcement that would be watching, but it also made the scene feel more authentic and real and gave me more of a purpose of being there rather than just the guy who drove the lawyer in. So that's my caveat. Take the knowledge, use it if you can, but if necessary, you're not there to argue with or fight with the director or the cinematographer or the writer. You work with them to do the best you can. So the first thing that we're taught in law enforcement in the academy, or whether if you go to a college for it as well, the first level of um, force, FORCE, is police presence. Oftentimes, just being there is enough to diffuse a situation. You know, people are having an argument, you walk in, sometimes, and it doesn't matter if they're just like, oh, I think I will not argue with you anymore, or if they're like, I don't want, sounds horrible, I don't want the cop to beat me up, so I'm going to back down now too. The point is that we don't have to physically do anything or threaten anybody. Just being there is oftentimes enough to diffuse the situation. And that's always what we're taught the very first thing you do. Police presence followed by verbalization, which I'll get to in just a second. So, police presence, I think that's my next slide. Yeah, police presence is your uniform. So, you posture, how you're standing. When most of the time I worked at the department, I was in what we called Class C uniform, which was like this: a polo shirt, slacks, and a badge and gun, but it was more casual looking. When you put on a uniform where it's you're zipping everything up, and you sometimes putting on a tie, sometimes not, sometimes wearing a hat. It's like putting on a costume, like many actors do. You feel the character when you put the costume on. It's the same thing is true for police officers. When you put the uniform on, you tend to stand straighter. You are more, you're not actually more broad-shouldered, but you feel more broad-shouldered. You have a different aura about you that comes across. I had people that would see me like if I was wearing my proper dress uniform for a funeral or whatever, people would walk by me that they'd saw me every day and not recognize me because they weren't used to seeing me in this particular thing. So whenever you're putting on that uniform, there's a certain presence that comes with it, a certain identity. Um, I've was years ago, I was in an audition room, one of those buildings that has like several rooms for people to audition, and people were waiting to go inside. And there was a gentleman there. I wasn't auditioning for the project he was auditioning for. I was there for something else, but he was sitting there and he was in a police uniform, but he was sitting. I don't know if you can, how much you can see. Let me tilt down a little bit. He was sort of sitting like this, hunched over, not at all feeling the presence of the police. He was just a guy in an outfit. And I guarantee you he did not book the job because you can't walk into an audition, yeah, yeah, like this, trying to play a police officer and come across as a police officer. Whether you have experience like I do or not, when you come in there, you're representing a certain thing, and you've probably heard people say, "We just want you to be you. You know, you are enough," or you're coming in there and you're playing yourself. You can do that with the uniform as long as you're aware of how the uniform should and can change you. When you're a police officer, you're holding authority as well. There's a certain way that you control yourself, whether it's overload of testosterone or whatever you want to call it. It's a certain uh, presence. I don't know a better word for it, unfortunately. And then you always want to remember that there's a gun belt. So there's 30 to 50 pounds of equipment that's on your waist that you're holding, that your belt is holding up. You've got the gun, you've got the radio, you've got handcuffs, you've got extra magazines, um, you've got a baton, whether it's a collapsible baton that's about this big, or we have this. Oh, that's not showing up very well on my camera. This was the PR-24 my dad carried in the 80s. It's a nightstick that's also works as like a martial arts weapon. It's designed to do both, and it's designed to be able to hold on to tightly so you don't lose control of it. So all of that is hanging off of your belt and weighing you down, which also helps you. For whatever reason, you kind of strengthen your core and hold up more. Um, as far as verbalization, there's a tone and tenor of a voice that a cop uses. I have done it before where I was just talking to a lady when I was working for Hickory Farms one Christmas break. And she was like, "Oh, I don't think you were really a cop." And really, young lady, you don't believe that I was a police officer? And she was like, "Oh." Instantly, that voice and that tenor, my dad used to get people all the time, "Stop shouting at me." And he's like, "I'm not shouting at you. And it's simply raising the vocal tenor to that point where it's a very commanding voice. Not everyone can do it. Not everyone has to do it, but if you can pull it off, it's very effective. The other thing with verbalization, and this is something we're taught in the academy, is you verbalize all the time. Stop resisting. Please, sir, please stop. Please, sir, back up. Sir, I need you to step back, please. Things like that. You're always talking, and it's for two reasons. It's one, because you're trying to control the situation, but also it's to control the narrative. Because to be perfectly honest, we have too many instances of police brutality and things that go wrong and things that should not happen. You don't want, if you're doing your job right as a police officer, you don't want someone to think that you're doing something inappropriate. So you verbalize that. Stop resisting. Why are you fighting with him? Because he's like fighting with me. I would, as soon as I am able to stop the fight, I will stop the fight. And that's what our use of force matrix is, from presence to verbalization through physical contact hard, or soft, physical contact hard, other weapons like the baton or a taser, and then finally, if necessary, lethal force. And it's not the where you keep going forward, you're always trying to de-escalate. And I'm probably giving you guys a little bit more information than you necessarily need as actors, but just trying to give you the full picture of what the situation is, how it's addressed. Um, yeah, there's gun belt. There's a picture of it. So you can see there's radio. That's his pepper spray. Hopefully you can see my mouse. That's extra magazines. I don't know why he has a knife there. Gun, handcuffs. Now, I prefer to keep my handcuffs on my hip. Some guys put them different places. That's usually nowadays the extra magazines would go where his handcuffs are at, and the taser would go where the extra magazines are at, so that you don't pull a taser when you're supposed to be pulling a gun and vice versa. There have been several officers that were killed because they were using a taser to try and stop someone who was using lethal force against them, and they really needed to do a gun, not necessarily to kill the person. That's not the point. The only point is to stop. So you stop that person from whatever crime they're doing or threatening another person's safety. If necessary, yes, then they have to die. But that's not the intent of it. The intent of it. The intent of it is to stop them from continuing the crime or continuing to cause a threat to someone else's safety. Okay, here's some stuff that's more for the actors. The other stuff is sorry, I'm second guessing myself now as I'm going through it, especially since I can't see anybody. And that's fine. Don't worry about me. I'm an actor. I'm used to having instant feedback. Um, so holding a gun, what you see here, Jack Bauer, Kiefer Sutherland doing is what's called a Weaver stance. It's a little less used nowadays by actual cops, but it's very popular in Hollywood. That's what most people do. It's you do Weaver, or you do modified Weaver, and it's your strong leg is back, your strong hand is forward, holding the gun. You can cup it. You don't have to cup it, but cupping it also improves the accuracy. And the closer the gun is to you, the easier it is to control. So, when you're going through clearing a building, you'll be holding it, tip the camera down here. You'll be holding it like this, up against your chest, because this way I have clear motion. And even if I'm a lousy shot, whatever I'm pointing at is where the bullet is going to go. Now, if I'm a good shot, that's going to happen however I'm holding the gun. As soon as I'm holding the gun, wherever my finger points, and I'll show you that in the next slide. This is how we hold a gun. Wherever my finger points is where the bullet is going to go. It's not going to happen when you're using a fake gun or when you're using a prop gun, but in real life, there is recoil, which also is why it's good to have it here. But you will feel it if you're not in a real situation. If you're not holding the gun properly, you'll slice open a piece of your hand as the slide racks back to fire the bullet. Triple retention holster is the type of holster that you have. I'm going to stand up so you guys can sort of see this. I might have to take off my cute little backdrop here. All right. So when you're drawing a gun, it doesn't just come out of the holster. It actually, you snap off a snap, pull it back, and then lift it out. And they're designed that way legally so that you aren't just pulling the gun and shooting whoever you feel like. They want to make sure that it's a conscious thought that you're drawing the gun. When you get what you do is when you are in uniform, when you're practicing, when you're getting used to it, it becomes second nature. So you can pull it out as quickly as possible, but it still is, because of the training, is the conscious thought, why am I doing this at the same time you're pulling it out? So you know that it's there for a reason. Duty load is this is a frustrating thing for me when I'm watching TV and movies, because it's a very cool sound to hear the slide rack back and then snap forward. And that's awesome. But what we're taught to do as officers is you put on your uniform, you put on your gun belt, you take the magazine out of your gun, take your gun, sorry, take your gun out, slide back so that now you have a bullet in the chamber. You reholster the gun, take the magazine out, and you add one more bullet, because now you have 16 shots. Heaven forbid you're in a gunfight and you run out of bullets. Now you have 16 shots before you have to swap out. And often what we're taught to do is to swap out before you run out. So you've got 15 and then you're putting another magazine in so you can keep going. Very few officers are actually involved in a gun battle, but that happens all the time on TV. And I see it all the time on TV where people are pushing the slide back constantly. I watched, I wish I could remember what movie it was now to tell you guys. You can go look it up, but there was a movie I watched. The guy literally racked the slide back 6 times before he ever even saw the bad guy. And every time he's doing that, he's ejecting a bullet from the gun. So now he's down to 10 bullets because somebody thought it was cool for him to play with the gun that way. Frustrates me to no end. You'll probably have to do it if you're playing a cop on TV or film, but just be aware that this is the real way it's done. And then trigger safety. You can't see Kiefer's finger, but it is outside the trigger as I demonstrated before. Here's a little bit of close up. We're trained to always keep our finger on the outside of the gun until we need to use it. The only time your finger should be going into the trigger is if you intend to fire the gun. Um, all guns are a little bit different. Some guns have safeties, some do not. Glock, which was for years was the number one gun used by law enforcement, the safety is your finger. It's a 7 to 8 pound trigger pull. So you have to like physically do it, but that's the only safety it has is you pulling your finger in. So you don't want your finger in there accidentally firing off a round and hurting somebody because that's not what we're there for. So when you're clearing a building, when you're coming in, you keep your finger on the outside of the gun until the time comes that you have to use it as a firearm. Um, Holding a shotgun or a rifle, I see it all the time. They're holding it this way or they're this. It's fine carrying it, but if you're actually going to fire it, you want to put it in the pocket of between your shoulder and your clavicle, your breastbone here. So it wants to go right in there. If you're doing it right, when I used to go to the range to train, would always have to get new collar brass. That's the little things that say sheriff's department or police department on the collar. Because if you're doing it right, the recoil of the weapon is breaking that brass in half because it's taking the impact from it. So it's always up and it's always because you want to make sure that you are seen through the sight. Um, Here's the use of force matrix. I give a little bit more detail. And actually, where is my, oh, here we go. I'm going to bring up chat real quick just so I can see what I'm doing. Sorry, you're going to see my little, well, maybe you will, maybe you won't. Oh, there it is. Okay. Copy. So I made this so you guys can have it just as a reference guide.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. And close chat. All right. So this is the way it moves. And again, we go from least force to lethal force, but at the same time, it doesn't have to keep going up. If you can de-escalate, it's your responsibility to de-escalate. So officer presence, verbal direction, and that can be as simple as license and registration, please, or sir, I need you to step back. Sir, put the knife down, that type of thing. Empty hand control, you have soft and hard. Soft is controlling. So it's, you're controlling the wrist, you're controlling, if you ever see where they're walking like this, it's called an arm bar, and it's literally a way to control the suspect with just their arm and move them along. Can also be done with average person. It doesn't have to be a suspect, and you just use a little bit less because with an armbar, I can tweak it and put you in pain and you'll obey, or I can just guide you this direction without hurting you. Either one works. And then hard impact is literally, fist or knee or foot or hand. Um, Intermediate weapon, OC spray, baton, pardon me, um, taser, can also be canine or a vehicle, if you're using the vehicle to stop someone. All of those are non-lethal intermediate weapons. And then, of course, the final resort is deadly force. Oh, sorry, intermediate can also be beanbag rounds or tear gas, that type of thing that they'll shoot into a crowd. So safety for you. Now some of this is hard because I don't have good visuals for it. Um, if you've ever played one of the like Call of Duty or one of those type of video games, they actually reward you for doing this wrong, for clearing a room wrong, because they want you to peek out and fire at the people quickly. Um, in real life, looking into a room or leaning into a room without doing it properly can get you killed very quickly. So you always want to do what we call slicing the pie. And that's actually a military term. It's a tactical military came up with it. Police officers adopted it. And you go in and you use pieces, just like it seems, pieces of a pie so that you can see as much of the room as possible. You come into the room and then you turn so that you can get the other side of the room you weren't able to see. You always want to be hyper aware of your situation, of anything happening around you. You don't want to just run into a room and then, oh crap, there's a bunch of bad guys in there. What am I going to do now? Now that's something I forgot to mention before. Um, in real life, I've never once heard a police officer anywhere call a suspect or a bad guy a perp. It's just not used, except on TV. We call them bad guys, we call them idiots, assholes, MF, or stupid MF. Uh, Bad guy is the most common term, especially if you're in public, because you don't want people to hear you swearing or whatever. Um, but we never call them perps. So, go round up the perps or go, yeah, no. Suspect or bad guy is usually what we do. But you don't want to go into a room and there's a bad guy. You also don't want to go into a room with four of you and then you're all firing weapons at each other. That's not good. You don't want to kill your fellow officers. But I see it all the time in TV and film, and actually seen it in real life too, where people just you get hyped up on adrenaline and they're trying to stop the car and they're all firing through the windows at each other, trying to stop the guy driving the car. Um, so safety also includes finding cover. If you are in that gun battle, I hate to disabuse you of the notion, but a car door is not going to stop a bullet. Neither is a table. Neither, I mean, unless it's like solid 4-inch hardwood, it's not going to stop a bullet, especially not a card table or, that type of thing. Um, Too often they show that in TV and film where it's like, oh, they're hiding behind. We're taught to hide behind the engine block of the car because that's the thing that can stand it. Or you get far enough back. Even when you see like they'll open the door, you're still, as the officer, you're still trying to lean into the car. So most of your vital is protected by the engine block. So you're not hit by things coming at. So you try to be aware of that. Again, you're probably going to end up in a situation where you have to do it the way they want to do it, but at least you'll know, oh, this isn't the right way to do it. um, we control the suspect, whether it's with handcuffs or with our physical. You always search the suspect. So you want to make sure they don't have anything, not just a weapon, but you don't have any needles or anything that might hurt me, do you? And you ask them this while you're, reaching in there. Um, it's something that a lot of cops have to get over with. You have to thoroughly search them because if the bad guy knows that you're not going to reach down and check his crotch, then that's where he'll put his weapon or his drugs or his money that he doesn't want you to find. You have to reach in there. And that's also why, if you need to search a female suspect, you get a female officer on there because you don't want them not necessarily to not feel uncomfortable, but you don't want there to be any question of the validity of the search and what was it was done for. You don't want somebody thinking that you're just copping a feel or whatever. Do people still use that phrase, copping a feel? Um, you guys, if you've been on set, you might have heard somebody use the term 10-2 for crew or some actors. For law enforcement, we call it a 10-9. Or I'll be 10-6, which is busy for 10 minutes. I've got to do a 10-9, a uniform adjustment. That basically means you're going to the bathroom or you're just taking the belt off for a second so you can breathe and it doesn't, because again, you're carrying around 50 pounds all day. Um, da, 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 da. Safety for the suspect. You've probably seen this on TV, and this is accurate. They put the hand on the top, watch your head. That's to make sure that they don't hit their head on the door, but it also allows you to control them as you're putting them in the car. Make sure that your body is between them and exiting the car so that they can't like try and escape. Um, all right, I'll ask this in the I'll put your answers in the chat. If you were sprayed with pepper spray or OC, Olysin capsaicin, which is basically it's the same thing the way they measure how hot peppers are, like peppers that you eat, like hot wings or whatever. That's what it is. I know guys that used to spray it on their popcorn and use it that way after it was expired. So put in the chat if you would just hit a suspect with pepper spray, do you think you should offer them water, yes or no? Okay, we have a no, a yes, hell's no. Yes, yes. Okay, let me throw this out there. Three amoebas. What would to be nice? What three amoebas? What would you do instead? Just curious.
Okay, are we unmuted?
Yes, we're unmuted.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're unmuted. What would we do after we sprayed him and then said hell's no?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Kick him.
Okay. Well, no, that's not the okay.
No, I mean, I would imagine if you're adding water to him, isn't that going to make it worse?
Yes, that is correct.
And so we do actually then want to give him water.
That is also correct.
Okay, good. Okay, we're good.
When I was going through the academy, one of the things that we all had to do was we all had to take a direct hit from OC pepper spray. And I was the brave one that just went up to the lieutenant and said, "All right, hit me," like full face. And I paid for it. And then they're like, "Here, have a bottle of water, have a hose and all." The reason that OC works is because it's little tiny beads of pepper, of the material. Putting water, even putting milk, because some people, oh, put milk. No, it actually drives it deeper into your eyeballs. It makes it worse. However, as the officer with people watching you, it looks like you're being helpful. You're like, oh, here, have some water, put some water on it. It looks like you're helping, you're actually making it worse. The only thing that solves it is air. And people won't believe you, but it's just pry your eyeballs open and let the air come in. That is the only way to really solve it. One other just fun one. We used to carry water in the car. We also used to carry Coca-Cola. Carried a 2 liter of Coke with us. That was for cleaning blood off of the sidewalk because the ingredients in Coca-Cola make a wonderful acidic compound that strips the blood right off of the pavement. So think about that next time you're enjoying your soda. All right. Handcuffing. So this is going to be harder to do. I wasn't able to pull my handcuffs out. They're buried in storage, I hate to say. Um, but there's two ways to do it. There's the proper way and then the way to do it for camera. Because usually when scene is just about getting to this other part of it. So handcuffing the proper way, you would have them interlace their fingers behind their head, and then you come up and you put a hand on one side, pull it down. This one's still up. And then you guide the other hand down and you use the handcuff itself. You see the metal there on their wrist bone to snap it around. And they will complain that it hurts and they will complain that it's too tight. It's usually not. Make sure it's set adequately. And then, I don't know if you can see, there we go. That's a handcuff key. Another thing that always irritates me when I see it on TV, they're like, I can't find the keys. I can't find. It's a universal key. 99% of handcuffs use this key. So yeah, okay. It's you don't have the guy next to you's got one. And this is the part that locks or unlocks. But this other tip, well, in the cuff. There's a little divot in the cuffs, and you slide it in and you snap it so that, again, this is for their safety, the handcuffs don't tighten anymore. Because the way handcuffs work is they slide around and they just keep going around till they're open again. So if you don't double lock it, it's just going to keep tightening and tightening and tightening on that person's hand. Now, once it's double locked, you can actually push it a little bit further with your hand, but they can't accidentally make it tighter. So you use that again as a way to control them. When you're on camera, the easiest way to do it is just to come up behind them and mime as if you're doing it, and then you hold one wrist and hook your thumb over the other. As long as they keep their hands together, it's going to look like they're handcuffed because your hand is covering where the cuffs would be. And that's much quicker and easier to do on camera because there are scenes where it is about them being handcuffed, but then there most of the time it's scenes about pardon me, about them uh about it's just the handcuff is just one piece of the scene and you want to keep moving on. So you do that so you're not holding them up and going, how are we going to fix this in editing? You just get it on there and then you move on to the rest of the scene. Miranda rights warning. Everybody knows this. It does occasionally change slightly. Um, the most recent change was in 2022. That was when they clarified the language on that last line that's there. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. Do you understand the rights I have just read to you? And then the last line that's most recent is, with these rights in mind, do you wish to speak to me? Generally, most of the time on television, you're only hear the first four, which is fine. They also read them every time they arrest somebody, which is not actually how Miranda rights work. Miranda rights is what the person has. Miranda warning is what the officer's reading. And we usually have a card that we carry so you read right off of it. So there's no confusion, no chance that you've said something wrong. But Miranda is read when a person is in custody. So they're either under arrest or they're not free to leave. Being in cuffs is not in custody, believe it or not. Being in cuffs is for your safety and theirs, so nobody gets hurt. When you say you're under arrest or they ask, am I free to leave? And you say, no, you're not free to leave, then you are in custody. That's item one. Item two is they have to be interrogating or questioning them about a crime or a criminal activity they may be connected to. So if you haven't arrested them, you don't need to read Miranda warning. If you're not asking them questions about a crime or something that might incriminate themselves, you don't have to read Miranda to them. But the reason that that you see it on television all the time, we haven't always had Miranda rights. The law was passed in 1966. And one of the things that happened is that when they passed the law, they're like, we need to make sure people are aware of this. How do we make sure that as many people as possible are aware of this? And they went to this gentleman on the right. If you're of my vintage, you might recognize these two people. Those are the gentlemen from Dragnet. Jack Webb was the man who created the show, was the chief detective in every episode. He is also the only civilian ever to be buried with an LAPD badge. He was that significant to the department. He worked very closely with another man by the name of Gene Roddenberry that you might have heard of that created Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry worked for the LAPD as the public information officer for about 10 years before he joined or before he quit and started making television.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So the judge, one of the judges came to Jack Webb and he's like, we want people to know about this. And he's like, consider it done. So in every single episode of the show, every single time someone is arrested, they are read the Miranda warnings. And it goes on and on and on. And it became this staple of police shows. And so now 95% of the time, that's exactly what they'll do. And if they don't, people freak out. Wait, did they not? Were they supposed to? Even though it isn't necessarily the case. But just something to know. You're probably going to say it, or you're probably going to get halfway through. And I did a scene where they were starting it, and the guy, oh, I know. In real life, I'd have to finish reading it to him. In the show, was like, okay, let's ask you these questions. Interrogations, just a
Real
few
quick, if
Yeah.
you know, Leslie asked, do we
Oh,
know where
sorry.
the name Miranda writes, like Miranda? And then Sean said
Oh,
he believes Miranda was the name of the person who was arrested and then brought the case to the Supreme Court.
yes, yeah. Miranda was the last name of the person who was arrested. Uh, I don't know the first name, but that was the person who was arrested. They claimed that their rights were abused, that
Hmm.
they didn't have to answer questions that would incriminate them. Fifth Amendment, I refuse to answer on the grounds that it might incriminate me. They felt pressured by the cops to admit to wrongdoing, even though they had that right, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and that's why in '66 they handed down the ruling, United States versus, or sorry, yeah, United States government versus Miranda, and established the Miranda rights and the Miranda warning.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Sorry, I wasn't looking at the chat. I should have been doing it.
Oh, you're fine. I'm here to pop in.
Oh, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. My least favorite anyway. I was going to play some video clips, but I couldn't get them to work. One of my favorite scenes of all time is the show Blue Bloods, uh, first season, episode 9. There's a bad guy that's threatening uh, Frank, Tom Selleck's daughter, with a knife, and he's like, "If you don't stop," and Frank just shoots him right over his head. He doesn't argue with him. He doesn't, it doesn't this back and forth. Oh, you can't know. Frank knows that he can shoot and he is accurate enough, and the bad guy falls down, and it's the end of the scene. One of my other favorite ones is from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is I Want It That Way. If you've seen the show, there's a woman that comes in. It's the cold open to the show. A woman's like, I couldn't see the guy's face that killed my brother, but he was singing along with the music at the bar. And he's like, what song? It was I Want It That Way by the Backstreet Boys. Like, all right. So he's like, and they do a lineup, which we don't do lineups anymore either, but he's
Oh,
like,
really? Okay.
number one, sing I Want It That Way. And he's like, okay. And he starts singing and he goes through, and then they get to the bridge and Jake is singing along. Oh yeah. And then the last guy sings and he's like, Oh yeah, wow, got chills. And the woman's like, number five. Number five is the guy that killed my brother. And he's like, oh my God, I forgot all about that.
Now we were here.
That
Oh,
is my absolute favorite episode of all time. I love that episode. That intro, that killed me. It's so funny. It's so good. Oh my God, I forgot that part. Mm.
we
Anyway,
actually had just because you brought that up, and then
yeah,
we got to have Joe Latruglio come up here and do his debut directorial bit, and he had his wife starring in it. It was called Outpost, and it was
okay,
filmed right up here in Coolin, Idaho, and it was really fun. He's hilarious in person as well.
that's awesome. It's always nice when they're both nice and they're actually funny in real life too.
Yeah. And it was very, very cool to be directed by an actor too. It
Yes.
was a
Oh yeah,
completely
sure.
different experience.
Very cool. That's awesome. Okay, back to see, I don't want to take up too much of your guys' time. So,
Oh, you're good.
uh,
We're here for it.
as far as interrogations, this is something most people are not aware of. Cops are permitted to lie within reason. Now uh, you can't use physical force or threats against them or their family to obtain a confession, but you can say, and they do use it in television a lot. Oh, the guy in the next room your accomplice is telling us everything. So whoever says it, gives us the most first is going to get a better deal. And I'm in a group on Facebook that actually answers law enforcement questions for writers also, and that's one of the ones we get a lot is, um, well, what can the cops do with the judges, and or how would they charge them? And it's like, okay, cops arrest the bad guys. They charge them because we have to give some reason for holding on to them. Otherwise, we have to let them go within 48 hours, 24 in some places, depending on the ordinances.
Hmm.
Cops don't decide what they're ultimately charged with, or how they're tried, or what the judge is going to see or not see, or what is going to happen in court. In fact, we used to have this joke that we take the when we take the court oath, I promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. For a law enforcement officer, it has the caveat that the prosecutor will allow me to say,
Hmm.
because there is information we have that is not necessarily admissible or we're allowed to mention. And in some communities, or in some areas, you're allowed to be coached by the prosecutor, some you're not. In Florida, we were not. So we just had to sort of read the signs from what they were saying. Um, what your testimony is going to be beforehand. So you have to tell the truth as much as you're able and then not lie when you're on the stand. When you're in an interrogation room or even, on the street, you can tell them, oh, somebody else is doing this, or we have evidence of this, or we have this, as long as you're not inducing them to commit a crime or threatening them or, physically assaulting them to get a confession or to get the response you need, it's permitted. Now, sometimes to lie. Now, sometimes cops go overboard. There are instances where you spend hours in interrogation, just sitting there waiting. It gets to the point um, where the person is like, I have to do something. I have to say something just so they'll let me go. That's probably too much. In most cases, it's too far. Some cases you do want to sweat them out if you know something they don't know, or if you have evidence that you want them to confirm. But in most cases, anytime you're there more than 24 hours, that's a no-no. Anytime you're over there more than 12 hours, that's probably too much.
Hmm.
Um, the things you see on TV or hear about good cop, bad cop, or befriending the witness, the bad guy. Oh, I those women, that's how they are, and that type of thing you'll see Stabler used to do it on Law and Order all the time. Other psychological tricks. The beauty of them is that they work even if the guy that you're doing it to or the girl you're doing it to is aware of it. They can go, oh yeah, good cop, bad cop, but it still works in their brain. They don't know why, but it still works. So that's why they're tried and true. That's why they happen over and over again. DUI stops. So I added this as kind of like a last minute bonus just for to thank you guys for having me here. Because I ran camera, I've been on both. Again, I was a journalist before. I've been on both sides of the camera several times. I worked probably close to 10,000 DUI checkpoints in my.
Wow.
So I know I know everything by heart, but I also know what to look for and stuff like that. I am as good as the people that were trained by the Department of Justice or the FBI in detecting uh, drunkards. Yeah. So the first thing that I always tell people is it's a field sobriety exercise. It's not a test. There isn't any pass or fail because you always get the guy, oh, I passed your test. I passed your. No, sir, I'm sorry. There's no pass or fail. It doesn't work that way. What field sobriety exercises or FSEs is a series of divided attention exercise. So the only one that's actually a test and is of sorts and is almost entirely unassailable. It is determined every time without question, especially if you have somebody like me running the camera, is horizontal gaze nystagmus or HGN. So your eyes are constantly in motion. They're moving all the time. But you can't see it if you just look at it, if you look in the mirror, unless there are a few people that have what's called natural nystagmus. The actor that played Superman's father in the most recent movie has natural nystagmus. If you look at him in the scene where he's talking with Clark, his eyes are quivering even before he starts crying. What happens when you have alcohol in your system is that your whole body slows down. So these constant motions suddenly become much more obvious. And so in most states, the legal limit for being intoxicated is 0.08. 0.08 is nystagmus appearing at 80%. So if I have my pen or my finger right at this point and their eyes are bouncing up and down, then I know that they're over the legal limit of alcohol. And I can prove it in court. Now, if I do this and their eyes do that as well, they're probably also on some other intoxicants, usually drugs. Drugs cause vertical gaze nystagmus. The heel to toe walking, suspending your foot and looking down and counting it, doing the alphabet backwards, reaching to touch your nose. Those are all divided attention exercises.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about, can they keep track of what you are saying and follow those instructions than whether they actually are good at it or not. You could stumble on heel to toe and I'm not necessarily going to say, oh, you're drunk. But it's forgetting to count, forgetting to turn the right way, forgetting to look down at your toe when you're doing it, forgetting not estimating the right distance. It's all these things. The alphabet backwards, I hate because it's hard for me to do.
Yeah, it seems impossible.
It's like, how do you do? Because you're used to singing it forward, and so how do you go backwards? Touching your nose is more about depth perception and not knowing where your nose is actually at. But those are designed to enhance, just to add on to. So, like I said, I can tell from HGN whether or not you're intoxicated. If I'm not quite sure, or well, we go through the full thing anyway. We do 3 every time. That's mandated by law just to make sure, unless they refuse, at which point you have to make your own decision. And like in Florida, we can arrest them and then say, yeah, basically read them a card and says you have to take a breathalyzer test. If they refuse that, then I have to make a determination again. Um, but I can tell from the HGN whether or not they're drunk. Once I have three indicators, three exercises, then that's basically there's nothing they can do, and they're going to go to jail for 8 hours, assuming they're intoxicated. Some people give off the appearance of being intoxicated and aren't. So, but the HGN is impossible to fake. Sorry, I saw something come up on the chat. Uh, oh, yes. I have a script that depicts a drunk guy that falls asleep on a bench in a park and has a conversation. He could be the in my experience, we very rarely would arrest someone for drunk and disorderly or for being walking while drunk or sitting while drunk. Um, it's typically again, well, I didn't say that. The whole thing that we say is to protect and serve. The serve is the important part for most officers. We want to keep people safe. We want to keep people protected. So if he's operating a vehicle, I don't want somebody operating a vehicle that's intoxicated because they can't react in time. They can't control the vehicle. They might get home, but odds are against that happening without hurting somebody or damaging property. If he's just, sorry, if he's just sitting there at a bench, uh, you could arrest him or just, sir, I'm going to take you in and let you sleep it off because I'd rather you be here in the cell where at least you can eat.
Mm.
Because you have to be there for 8 hours. That's required. That's our requirement by law because that's how long it takes for alcohol to leave your system is at least 8 hours. He could arrest him. He doesn't have to. Um, Depending on how you want to depict the cop, a good cop would, get him to a shelter or maybe take him in, like I said, and let him sleep it off in the jail. Or like, sorry, like Barney Fife or not Barney Fife, Andy used to do in Mayberry.
Otis.
Otis, yeah, yes, Otis, yes, thank you. But yeah, he doesn't have to take him in as long as he's not going to operate a vehicle.
Yeah, he says it looks like they have an antagonizing history together, and the cop is not a good cop. He's just really angry.
Oh, well, in that
So,
case, yes, he
how,
could.
how would he go about making it legal for him to arrest that person? Or can he just do it because the person's clearly intoxicated in public?
He can do it because the person's clearly intoxicated. The best way would be to run him through the FSEs, the field sobriety exercises,
Mm.
which he's going to fail, and then take him in because then you have proof, whether it's on his body cam or his dash cam, that this person was unable to fulfill was sorry, I almost said pass or fail, was showed clear signs of being intoxicated beyond reasonable doubt.
Okay.
So yeah, he could take him in, and in that case, that starts to take his time getting him to the jail. So by the time he gets to the jail, he's got another 8 hours. So he's spending the whole next day in jail as well, if the cop's trying to antagonize him.
Well,
Uh,
cool.
in Lethal Weapon, one of the actors holds his gun flat close to his chest, like this or like this. One or two.
One.
One. Sorry, now I like this. Yeah, that's fine. That's uh that's called duty ready. So we usually use that when we're on the range because you don't ever want to like be pointing a gun while your captain is walking out to check the targets or whatever. So you keep the gun here, pointed usually at a down angle so that you're also not exposing your fellow shooters. But if he's clearing a building and holding it like this, that's fine too because it's just a quick swivel. Sorry, I camera's too high. So it's just a quick swivel out to this. And again, this has control. He might not be able to see through the sight, but knowing it's here, he's going to be able to fire directly at whatever he's pointing at. Um, the most, sorry, I'll throw this in. The most accurate position to fire from is prone. So on your stomach, arms extended, laying forward, but that's really hard to do in a gunfight.
Mm.
You'll see it sometimes, like you'll use a barrel or you crouch down. Anything you can do to make yourself a smaller target is going to be an advantage, which is why Hollywood, at least, prefers the Weaver stance that I showed you before, where it's leg back, because you're exposing less of your body to the shooter, whereas isosceles, which is very common, is dead on. And that's great if you're at a firing range, but now you've got my chest, you've got my crotch, you've got my legs all exposed. If plenty of space as a target if the bad guy wants to shoot back. And I would prefer that the bad guy not hit me if he shoots back. My lieutenant, his twin brother was killed in the line of duty. He was wearing a vest and all, which sorry, I should mention that vest adds another 30 pounds typically, depending on how
Wow.
many plates you have in it. Because it's basically just it's not a bulletproof vest either. It's a bullet resistant vest. It's basically just like something that you put over you, and then it's got metal plates that slide into it. That those are what stops the bullet or slows the bullet down because you usually get a bruise or whatever. And most departments issue a very simple vest. And then if you want to, you can upgrade it. My nephew actually spent a few $100s to buy the best plates he could because he did not want to take the chance on getting shot.
Oh.
But my lieutenant's brother, the bullet went, you can't see where I'm pointing. The bullet basically went right underneath his vest,
Mm.
right above his crotch, and he died as a result. He was killed in the line of duty. That is rare, but it can happen, and is more likely to happen if you're in the isosceles position. So most officers that I worked with and knew used the Weaver or a modified Weaver where they sort of tips towards it, but it's or fighting stance is also it's sometimes also called where they can shift weight or whatnot. Most cops can only shoot with their dominant hand. They're encouraged to learn with their secondary hand as well, but most don't go through it. I'm just as effective because I'm partially ambidextrous with the left hand as I am with the right hand, but that's rare. So
Mm.
that's why most try to keep their body bladed away from, if that makes sense. Okay, let's see what else did I have here. Oh, if you want to watch some good examples of cops on TV and film, the show Bosch is pretty good. They sometimes heighten it. Same with Ballard, which is from the uh, same book series. The Rookie is exceptionally good.
Mm.
Um, I put in here, especially the first two seasons. Eric Winter, that played training officer Tim Bradford, is one of the best portrayals of a cop I've seen because he does come across as an asshole at the beginning, but it's because he cares so much about making sure that these rookies understand what they're doing and making sure that they are properly trained so that they can protect and serve their partners as well as the community.
Mm.
The Wire, especially season one, is good. The Wire is one of the few places that actually uses real police technology. So the forensic gear that I used, that I was trained on by the FBI, that, by the way, is part of that is an add-on to the Avid editing system. They use that in their show, and they actually show what video actually looks like. They actually use the fingerprint kit. I don't know if you guys can see this or not. No, of course not. Hang on. Let me shut off. Just background. Sorry. Let me take off my background. Blur. No, take it off. Okay. So that's what a fingerprint kit looks like. This is actually tape. Let's see, Scotch brand on the back where you'd lift it up. And then these are the different powders. We have, get it out of there, black powder that you would use. And then this is for excess powder, preserving, so you can keep track of each one of the fingerprints and you can label it on the form there. But shows like, for example, CSI, that the whole point of CSI was that they were using these cool uh, evidence technologies to solve crimes, except that they hardly ever used real technology, or they'd go, "Oh, that looks cool. Let's use it for this." And it's like, but that's not what that's for at all. But no, but it looks cool over here. And uh, we used to pass around clips of the stuff that they did, like the catching the reflection off of someone's eyeball. That was one of my favorite ones. And like, no, that's not how it works. And even if it did, if you zoomed in that far, it would be like
Mm-hmm.
like this. You wouldn't be able to see anything. So, uh, Blue Bloods, as I already mentioned, is good. Hill Street Blues, if you want to go old school. There's a new show on Amazon called On Call. They're not always as accurate as I'd like, but they're one of the better ones of recent memory. And then the movie Bullet with Steve McQueen is actually pretty decent. To a fault. They bent over backwards to try and make sure it was all accurate. And then if you're looking for literature, Joseph Wambaugh, who was an LAPD detective, he wrote his first three books while he was still a detective. Uh, and then Michael Connolly, who lives in Florida, but he actually both of them live in Florida now. He was a reporter for the LA Times and interviewed tons of officers over the years. And that's one of the reasons that the books he wrote, Bosch and Ballard, he also wrote the Lincoln Lawyer series, are so accurate because cops will talk to him that they won't when they won't talk to anybody else.
Hmm.
They stand up and do it. Yeah, Sean, you have a question?
Yeah, first, yeah, I love Joseph Wambaugh. Read all his books like 20 years ago. Great. My stepdad was a cop, so he always said Barney Miller was the most realistic cop show on TV.
Yeah, that's actually not inaccurate either, because it's all about paperwork. That's yeah. And that's pretty much all I have. I'm happy to answer any other questions you guys have. This is how you can contact me if you'd like to get a hold of me. You guys brought me here today. I usually do when I do this for when I'm coaching actors or I'm helping writers, I usually charge a fee. But I can, just mention that you're part of this, and I'm happy to give a discount or even just answer a few questions, for free. Happy to do that as a thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Hopefully
Just
you
real
guys got a lot
quick,
out of it.
if
Yeah.
I think if you stop sharing your screen, we should be able to see everybody's cams at that point.
Stop share. Oh, there we go.
And
Okay.
then I'll unpin you. Hello, there's everybody. Awesome, awesome. So, does anybody else, you guys have any questions or things that you wanting to say throughout?
I
Yeah.
have a few. Or go ahead. I mean, just
Oh,
did they have something?
Erica? Well, we'll let Erica go and then we'll jump back to you, Sean.
No
Um,
worries.
the question I had was in like female cop portrayals. Like, do you feel like you have to have a certain archetype like in TV, or do you think that there doesn't always a woman doesn't always have to overcompensate and be like a masculine female? Like, can a woman be feminine and be a police officer in on TV? Because I always see the archetype so much.
Well, yes and no. Yes, it's possible, but it's not typical to be portrayed that way on television. That's the same thing I go through. I'm hardly ever cast as a cop because I don't have the same. I'm not big enough to be like the portly cop, and I'm not muscular and small enough to be the regular cop that they picture. So it's just a typecasting thing. You have to deal with that. Um, Typically the women that are portrayed as cops are portrayed as more badass or more having more masculine traits. A few shows will do it where you get both best of both worlds. So you get to see that, she's when she's on duty, but then you get to see her off duty and she can look sexy or she can be more.
Because I was actually thinking of like Santana in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It's more comedic portrayal
Oh,
of
sure.
police officers. That like I'm more like a Santana casting type. Like
Okay.
I could be like the Miss Perfect kissing up person, but then I can also be badass when I need to be.
Sure. Yeah, that would be fine. Yeah, I could see that. Definitely in comedy, there's much more flexibility and range in that. Sean, we'll go to Leslie.
Yeah, so for I guess when directors are asking for your input and they make changes, like you were talking about, like, maybe how the cop stands or the handcuffing or Miranda, whatever. Is it more just because of how it will look on camera? Is it a budget thing? Maybe they don't have the budget for, to make it look more realistic. Uh, what are your experiences with that?
Uh, Typically, it's just that they have never thought of it that way. Um, I hate to say this as a writer, but writers will do research on things that they think they don't know about and ignore things and just assume that they know things that they may not know about, if that makes
Mm.
sense. Like I said, I'm in that Facebook group. It amazes me some of the questions people ask. It's like, I have never even thought of that. And at the same time, they're like, well, I know it's like this. And it's like, no, that's actually not true at all. That's just the way you've seen it on television. Um, so typically it's just that nobody ever thought of it that way. Or, oh, I didn't realize, that it could be, oh, I didn't bring up my number one pet peeve, which is something that no actor can really control. Uh, Almost every officer on television, especially if they're non-speaking, you'll see them as they walk by, their handcuffs will be right in the center of their back.
Yeah.
And I will tell you as an actor, for your own safety, move them. And the reason you can give to the costuming person who's going to go, what do you know, is that is a danger to my spine
Mm.
because one good hit and you fall down and you've just pressed 2 inches of metal hard into your spinal column.
Mm.
And that's why, like I said, I always wore them on my hip. They teach us that don't put it on your spine. Don't put your radio on your spine. That's the one section, like that 2 inch section that you don't want anything there because that could be a life-ending or crippling injury. And it's not even somebody attacking you. You can trip and fall or,
Mhm.
stumble or somebody bumps you, and that's the end of it.
Mm.
And it drives me nuts because I guess they think it looks cool there in the small of their back, but it's dangerous to the actor and it's dangerous to any police officer that would have it that way as well.
How interesting.
But yeah, I think honestly, most of the time, it's just that they haven't thought about it or they think they know what the truth is and they don't bother to look it up.
And do they ask you for your input, or like, are you on set and you can, you're like, actually, you wouldn't do it like this, blah blah blah. How does the
Sometimes.
actual consulting piece of
Yeah.
it work?
Yeah. When I'm there as a consultant, yes. They might not always listen to me either. Um, like for example, CSI had 3 or 4 that were consultants and they just ignored them when they wanted to. Um, but yeah, well, if I'm there as a consultant, if I'm there as an actor, I usually try to do what I can to work with them. And like I said, I go, do you mind, in my experience, it's actually this. Do you mind if we try it this way? And sometimes they're open to it and sometimes they're not. And, the director is the leader of the ship, so they get to decide. Leslie?
Hi, Paul.
Hi.
Hey, listen, I was wondering, are there aspects of eye contact that a cop uses to escalate or de-escalate
Hmm.
interaction? Is there anything in that? Because I know that, I mean, I'm just thinking of like, staring gorillas in the eyes, you ask for confrontation, that kind of thing. It's very animalistic. I'm wondering if that plays at all into interaction with with suspects.
That's a very good question. I've never encountered that. I've never been taught anything about that. But hmm. Typically, the suspects don't want to look you in the eye. That's one of the things about being law enforcement, about being the presence that's there, is that they will look away first. Um, it's very hard for them to keep a direct gaze on you. If they do, it sometimes can be seen as challenging. And I know I've seen officers start their adrenaline starts getting hyped up because of that, but it's not specifically a tactic that we've been taught to use. Um, I could see it being effective at times or effective in the wrong way at times.
Miss
And
Aubrey.
Oh,
Thank you so much, first of all, for coming to talk to us. I just got like so many notes, and I'm so glad that we recorded because like I know that it was just so much information that my brain is like, what? I was not expecting this much information. So, oh my God, thank you so much for coming. Um, I have like a bunch of comments, but I'm just going to ask my question. Um, is this stuff still applicable for military roles?
military is much the same, but not exactly the same. I
Okay.
can speak to so much of it because I've never been military. But there are some parallels. There is some overlap, definitely. Um,
Would there be like major differences?
the one that I can think of um, is the approach uh, as far as from my understanding, not all military carry weapons, and even the MPs are not necessarily what I call duty loaded, so they don't necessarily have an extra round in the chamber. Um,
Do you do consulting for military films? Do you do consulting for that as well as police?
I don't because
Okay.
I could if they had a law enforcement question, but I don't feel qualified to represent myself as military because I have never served. Closest I got, my grandfather was in the Navy in World War II. Um,
Mm.
but I was disqualified because of back surgery I had when I was in high school.
Oh, wow.
So that disqualifies you from military, but not from serving on the police force?
Correct. The military doesn't like you to have any metal in your body that they didn't put in there. And I have rods on my spine.
Why is that? Not
I
the
have,
spine thing, but like what's with the
oh,
obviously you have
I don't know what their reasoning is. I just know that the Navy recruiter about shot me when he found out I went for the surgery.
Oh,
Would have
okay.
rather I'd waited until I was already in the program and then they had taken care of it.
Oh, so
Okay.
if you had surgery after you were in the military, that's different than coming in with surgical implants
Yes, correct.
because they're military grade. I know there's a couple military guys here. I'm just like
I guess,
asking
yeah, I guess it's
questions
three of
right
us we can
in
ask.
front of you.
I honestly don't know. I just know that that was the circumstances. Um, I mean, they're aluminum. My spine is fused. They were experimental at the time, but now they're the normal thing that they do. But yeah, it's the military just does not tolerate that.
Were you done, Aubrey? Okay, I had real quick amoebas. Because I was gonna ask the same thing about the military only because my ex-husband was military. And when we would go shooting and I would go like this, he was like, "What? No. What do you do? No." And I was like, okay, well, where do I
Like
put this hand? And he was like, you have to hold it like this. And I think he said you put your, I can't even remember. It was so many years ago, but I remember it being
instead
different.
of copying it, he was doing more.
Yeah.
Yeah, both are acceptable. This, if you don't know where to put this thumb, that's going to get you hurt.
Yeah. No gangster pulls, no
No
No,
side
gangster.
pulls.
I have a
Uh,
story about that actually.
oh yes, please share.
Uh,
Yeah.
was on a crime scene and we were trying to figure, they were like, can't figure out, we know that there were so many shots fired, but we can't find. And so I'm like, well, these guys were like, want to be gangsters. So I'm like, what would happen if instead of us looking at it like this, if we looked at it, where would the shell be ejected? And looked around, oh, there it is, found it. But that was just one of those stupid things that, my
Like, do you think they
lieutenant
actually
used to
did?
say,
Yeah, they actually did.
So I did want to share one more thing since we're still technically on me. Okay. Um, m- Thank you so much for that caveat at the beginning of this whole thing about we we want to be as accurate as we possibly can, but like we are still making a film. So like having long conversations about like, well, this is how it's done. This is how it's done, not helpful. Like we just want to get the project going. That was such a wonderful thing to hear from a professional such as yourself. So like that's just focusing on story, not how things should be in real life. It's like let's focus on story. So thank you so much for vocalizing that. Um, and at one point you said the info that you're giving us is too much. It's not too much. We need to know all of it. It's awesome. The recoil thing that you were talking about, it is so important to play because I lost so much footage of myself in a film. It was a zombie Western film, and it actually turned out really, really great because my co-star was brilliant at doing all the gunplay and stuff, and I just kind of got to watch him be amazing. Um, but a lot of my footage was they couldn't use it because I had a shotgun and I didn't act with the recoil. I was just I was tired. I wasn't thinking. And so the DP finally at the end of the night, it's like it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, and he finally comes over to me and he shows me what he wanted it to look like. And I'm
And
like,
you're
it's
like, why
3
couldn't you have
a.m.
done
Why
that like
couldn't you
hours
do
ago?
yeah.
It's like, bro, just tell me, dude. Like, it doesn't look right. So they added stuff in post. They did get one shot of me. They made my hair look like it was flying, but so they did get one shot in post. But it's still like, oh, I ruined all of those shots of myself because I needed to act the recoil. Like, it's not a real gun. I need to make it look real. So I'm so glad that you talked about that because that needs to happen. Recoil needs to happen. Um, the slicing the pie thing. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Because my first 50-hour slam I ever did was with a guy that had a background in being a police officer as well. That was the hardest thing to learn on the fly. Slicing the pie, it's so tedious. It takes so long to figure out how to do because every room is different. If you walk up a stairwell and there's a room here and then you've got which there was like a stairwell, there's a room here that I had to clear. I had to go around a corner, I had to clear that room over there and so like slicing the pie for all of that, it especially during the 50-hour slam where you only have a certain amount of time, like you have to get this shit done. It's like I don't have time to practice this. So like that's one of those things that I'm sure taking your class and doing something with you in person, helping the actor know how to slice the pie, like invaluable to learn how to do to clear the room to because also in film that's what kind of builds up the tension, right? Is like you have your hero walks into the room, there's a bad guy in there, not a perp. Thank you for that, by the way. There's a bad guy in here, or many bad guys, and we need to shoot them, kill them, whatever. And to know how to slice the pie correctly and build that tension with confidence as an actor can make all the difference, I imagine. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
And then my only other two notes were thank you so much about like the pepper spray. Because as a person, like I would just offer water, like, I don't know, water, milk. And, like, so just knowing that, like, give them a fan. Like, no, I have like little fold up fans available here. And then the Coca-Cola getting the blood off the sidewalk. That is awesome.
I hope I never
And
need that
terrifying.
information, but yeah, I'm
Well,
glad I
and
have
it's
it.
terrifying because I've also heard that Coca-Cola, if you want to really like clean an engine or something, you can, oh my God, the fact that we put that in our bodies. Oh my God. Anyways, this was so wonderful. Thank you so much. I'll let somebody else ask questions, but Paul, this was I'm so delighted. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Pleasure.
All right, amoebas, you're up.
Okay, so a couple questions and a comment. Um, One of the questions is when we do put officers together, we want to be very accurate. Is there a legal issue, or where can we get, like, say, let's use Spokane because that's where we're out.
Okay.
Spokane badges, Spokane emblems, putting it on our police officers. We don't want it to look like they're from New York or Alabama or something like that. Is there a problem with getting the real badges and having those for movie props?
No, most you can find replicas of. If you're trying to remember what the movie was. Yeah, in most instances you can find badges that are replicas or that are close. I mean, a lot of the independent and even the larger, like I've been on studio shoots where they give you this cheap, plastic metally thing, and because you're far enough in the background or whatever, they assume it's not going to show up. But yeah, dang it, what was that movie? It's gonna irritate me. I was watching a film where they specifically said the guy was a sheriff's deputy, and then he walked into the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, except that their badges weren't FDLE and they weren't there were some other logo that was completely different, and it was like they just threw a bunch of people together in different uniforms, and like this is good enough.
You've
Um,
got the LVPD,
yeah,
you've got every PD.
yeah. So like yeah, if you're in Spokane, you wouldn't want like a Puyallup badge or yeah, or something from Oregon or something, like that. But yes, you generally I will see if I can find. I don't have it on hand. I will see if I can find the place where I've located them before, and I'll email it to Tabitha, and she can share it with you guys.
Okay, cool. The other thing too is as far as the uniforms and things like that, do you ever have, would you ever have a lieutenant be out on, to visit a patrol or anything like that? Or are we just talking sergeants, corporals?
Depends on situation. But yeah, it's the captain is hardly ever comes out unless it's like a major crime scene. But yeah, you typically, if there's a situation, the sergeant is the first one to show up. The lieutenant will sometimes come out as well. Sometime the one time that the captain may come out is if it's the watch commander, and like I said, it's a big thing, so they might show up just to make sure everything's being handled properly because they're responsible for everybody that's out in the street at that point. I've worked a couple of crime scenes where the sheriff and the chief of police show up, or even the chief of police from the next town over shows up because they heard it on the radio. But yeah, typically a lieutenant would not be unheard of, less likely than a sergeant, and far more likely than a captain or a major.
Okay. The other one would be is when they're out on a scene and FBI shows up. You always see in the movies where there's always this rift between all the federal guys and all the local guys, and they've got comments or they don't want to cooperate and stuff like that. How does that really go when you're on a crime scene and you get FBI or you get somebody show up that's from the feds? Do you guys really do get along, or do you guys have this big thing against each other?
Most of the time we get along. There are a few people that have some tensions, but it's usually a one-on-one thing or a personal thing. That's something, yeah, it's they use it in television to create conflict. I didn't do that. That was in my notes, but I don't think I put it on a slide. There's a hierarchy that you follow within a department. I used to make the joke that 24 would only be 12 if everybody stopped arguing with the people above them. And then it would actually be 48 though, because the traffic in LA there's no
Yeah.
way to get around that quick.
Did have a helicopter.
Yeah, exactly. He's using the secret underground passages right away. And DC.
And
As far as there are some guys that get upset because the FBI is coming in and they call it bigfooting the case. Um,
funny.
but if it's typically it's a crime scene, you're not going to have other agencies come in and do that. It's going to be the FBI comes, they talk to the sheriff or the captain or the major, and then it gets passed down, and it's like, okay, we're going to let them handle it. In in most cases, they're like, oh, they want to take care of this murder and take it off of our books. We're happy for them to have it. Yes, exactly. We I worked for a county agency. We used to joke that, and was not entirely untrue, the city cops would come and go, "Oh, drag the body over the county line, over the city. We had to deal with it rather than them." Um, but yeah, it's occasionally happens, but far less than what you see in film and television. It's we get along, until the FHP guy, Florida Highway Patrol guy, started sleeping with the other guy's wife. They were fine with each other, you know.
But for some reason after that, they just really didn't.
Yeah.
Was that it for
um,
you guys, or?
yeah, I think so. I was just trying to go through the scene. I guess when you're first on scene, it's not really about evidence or anything. There's always another team that comes in and searches for evidence as you're getting back up. I mean, would that be accurate?
Yes and no. The responsibility of the first responder is to protect the scene. So once you realize it's a crime scene or it's something that requires someone else, you call your sergeant, you call, either you or he calls crime scene so they can send some people over. You start putting up tape, isolating this, as wide area as you can because you don't know fully where the crime scene is at yet. So you cover as much as possible, so that it's protected. Um,
Which,
you
as a side tip, if you ever come up on a crime scene or you think something's happening, don't park right next to it. They will take your car.
Yes, yes, they will.
Did that
Um,
happen to you?
Yes.
there's also something that I didn't talk about, but that's one of the things that when you enter a crime scene, not anybody can just walk into a crime scene. Everybody has to get logged in. So they have a clipboard and they write down the name and what is your purpose for being there. So you can't just, even as another officer, just wander into the scene and go, "Oh, I'm going to go do this." No, you have to be invited. They keep track of it when you came in, when you left, that type of thing, so that they know. Because when it comes up in court later, we need to have a chain of evidence. We need to know who was there, what their involvement was, what they touched or interacted with. Um, and same thing, you wouldn't if it's a big crime, if it's a crime scene, you wouldn't necessarily collect evidence. You would wait for that, but you want to make sure that everything's preserved as much as possible. And you also want to check and make sure, okay, someone was murdered here. Is there anybody else in the house? Is there another victim? Is there somebody, hiding, waiting, whether it's a good guy or a bad guy? You want to make sure you want to know everything you can about the scene.
When the first officer on the scene, does he become the watch commander during that whole situation, or does the next higher rank come over and take over for him?
He becomes he okay. This is gets more complicated. The first officer on the scene, or if it's, usually they're working with a partner. The first officers on the scene, um, not usually, sometimes, they will be whoever's there first is in charge
Okay.
until the point where someone else is takes over. So they aren't considered the watch commander. The watch commander is over the watch. Sorry, lack of a better term. They're over the entire shift that's happening right then.
Okay.
They might come again if it's a big crime scene. They might come just to supervise and make sure that things are being handled. But yeah, the whoever's first on scene would be there. They would, record who was there, welcome the crime scene in. If their sergeant comes in and goes, "Okay, We have detectives from major crimes coming, or detectives from our substation coming. Once the detectives get there, then that initial cop will give a debrief to the detectives, and then the detectives take it over because they're now responsible for the whole case. The person who is first on the scene is still responsible for that crime scene until they are released from being responsible for that crime scene. That answer?
Does Well, and also too, just looking at a lot of the movies and stuff like that, there's always like the detectives walk into a room and there's like 20 guys standing around talking and stuff like that. And you're thinking, well, they're just stomping on evidence and everything. Does it usually just be the ones that need to be in there? So is it really like one or two guys? And even if there's a body, it's got to be systematically, right? It's
Yeah.
not walking around in
Yeah.
and out.
Yeah. For yes. Yeah. Yes. Those are usually because production's like, "Oh, it looks like it's empty in there. Put some more people in the background." Um, Case in point, I did a was called to a crime scene, showed up, and there were several people outside, but they had held the scene till I arrived so that I could record everything in the scene. So, I basically started a videotape and recorded everything walking into the house and identifying each of the 5 bodies that were there and estimated in the order that we believed that the killings had happened. In this case, it was a music producer that thought his wife was stepping out, or his girlfriend was stepping out on him, and couldn't he couldn't imagine a life without her and without the kids. So he came in, he shot her, he shot the 5-month-old baby, and then his 2 daughters, and then shot himself next to his daughter's beds. So I had to go through and do all of it, and that was before even the crime scene people came in, more in mass. A couple of them came in, identified what the situation was, called me so I could do my thing, and then each piece of the crime scene, each part of the house was processed separately by people. But there were never probably more than 4 or 5 people in the house at one time. And like my boss, the sheriff, was out and he's, checking on everybody's emotional health, which is weird. I didn't even get into that. Cops compartmentalize very, very well. They don't, like I just told you about that story. That would destroy some people even thinking about it. But it's no, that's this happened. I have to be that way so that I can do my job, or so I could do my job.
All right, my last question. If you had a partner and you went and he didn't show up and you went upstairs and found that he was sitting on the toilet and there was a bomb under the toilet, and would you actually stay there and pick him up and throw him into the tub, um, and let the toilet get blown out onto a station wagon?
Well, I'm not suicidal like Mel Gibson's character in that movie, so probably not.
Okay.
No, you would look for a way. I mean, you'd call and people with bunny suits would show up and they'd try to defuse the bomb, and
And say, sorry, buddy. I hope I see you later.
yeah,
Yeah, and do you think homeowners insurance would cover that?
that would probably be a no.
Okay. Okay, just check.
Miss
I'm good. We're
Leslie.
good. Anybody else? There's Leslie.
Yeah, I've got a question for you. So, have plainclothes policemen ever been mistaken as suspects on a crime scene because of the logistics or whatever of the crime scene itself? And then I think you might have answered this, but how to distinguish when the plainclothes police are already there, who they are, and what their uh what their reasons are for being there. Has that ever gotten really murky and mixed up?
It hasn't in my experience, but let me ask, are you referring to like a detective in a suit and tie, or are you possibly talking about someone that's undercover in the situation?
Yeah, undercover, someone who actually looks like they could be a part of the crime itself.
Okay. In my experience, most departments are not so large that you would not know who those people were.
Mm,
They do have identification that they can present. Sometimes in the situation, they want to be seen as the bad guys so that they can continue to operate in the system that they're in. Like for example, our drug guys would go and buy drugs, and then when they would come back to raid, they would wear balaclavas, so all you would see is their eyes, so that the bad guys never realized that these guys that had been in their house were the same guys arresting them. You know,
Okay.
it's for their safety.
Right.
The number one thing is to keep ourselves safe because you can't help someone if you're dead or injured. Um, yeah, as far as like I would see undercovers sometimes. Oh, they you see them in Walmart. It's like you don't acknowledge them because that could put them in danger. But in a crime scene, if they're there as part of the investigation, then they would be able to identify themselves if they felt the need. And they if they didn't feel the need or if they wanted to maintain their cover, they could choose not to, and we would treat them just like they were a bad guy until such point that it was made clear that we were not to do that. If that made sense.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, as far as plainclothes officers, usually you have a badge either on your neck or on your hip, um, gun and all that. You can tell that they're, that, and they also carry themselves like a detective. It's a very to be an undercover, it takes a certain uh skill set that not everyone has. And the ones that are good are really good, and you'd never know that they weren't, just
Mm.
as dark and evil as the guys that they're trying to take down.
Mm. Wow. Okay. Thank you.
One more question on that too, and it just kind of goes with that. Have you ever been on a case or a scene where there was a private investigator involved and he had to be questioned too? Or because you always see it in the shows,
Yeah.
and it's always like, I'm always just kind of curious. Has that ever actually happened? Was there ever a private investigator?
No, no, nothing. There was a dead body we recovered that came about because the private investigator found a connection, and then he brought it to us, brought it to brought it to the lieutenant, and then so we went out there and excavated the land for, God, that was a long day. 12 hours, then we took a rest period, and then another 15 hours. Because you can't just dig the body out, you have to protect the evidence. So just standing there for hours, and then inevitably somebody touches the body the wrong way or shifts it, and it pops,
Mm.
for a better term, and all the gases that have been building up suddenly explode into the air, and that's a smell that you can't get ever forget. Um, sorry, what was
Yeah, no, and I
Oh,
understand that I was a
no, no, I've never encountered one in a scene before.
okay.
No, sorry.
Well, and I understand that I was a rescue diver, so I know exactly what happens after weeks of bringing people up, but and some after they come up on their own. But the private investigator, can he actually just go say, "I have the evidence," or does he have to present it, or to the captain or the somebody? Do you guys go on his word? And can you go to a place to do this, or does he have to produce evidence?
He
Since he
doesn't have to produce evidence any more than any normal citizen would have
okay.
to. Just, I in the course of my investigation into this matter, I discovered this. You might want to look into it. I mean, he can be more vague if he really wants to keep himself out of it. He can call Crime Stoppers and just leave an anonymous tip as
Mm,
well.
okay.
Just drop that, and then they'll look into it because we have officers assigned to do that, to look into things like that.
Okay. Cool. That's good to know.
Miss Aubrey?
So my last question is, so yeah, the story you just told about the music producer and the horrifying triple homicide that it was. Um, I did notice that like you've experienced so much more than any, well, the three amoebas, with the exception of the of Matt of the three amoebas, because he's served. But like I've had no experience with murdered dead bodies. And the my my like Aubrey the actor's initial reaction to that kind of horror is shock and crying. So like, but if I'm playing this character who's a cop, like, is it realistic to have like a, I guess what I'm asking is the level of realism that we need to bring to these characters. They're like, not all cops have to be these like hardened cops, right? Like, I mean, and obviously the story itself will lend to what the character is going to go through in the scene. But to some extent, just hearing you talk about that just now and how it was very, it was just a casual memory. It seemed like, I'm sure it was like horrifying at the time, but like you do have you've seen so much that there's a it's I can tell that you're not indifferent. I can tell that like it happened, and that it was possibly a very like traumatic experience for you, but you've experienced it so much that you can talk about it with a practicality. Um, so I guess my question is kind of circling, um, is it realistic? Do you find when you watch some cop movies that like some of it is like overacting, or not overacting, that's not the right word, but that maybe a cop wouldn't have an actor playing a cop maybe wouldn't have a realistic response to what they're encountering, I
Yes.
suppose.
Yeah,
Okay.
that happens all the time. They overreact, not overact, but overreact, or they become emotional, or they express themselves in a way that most police officers would not. And if you, for lack of a better way to put this, if an officer did, they'd be called a sissy or, made fun of and that type of thing. But for most people, it's their brains are wired differently. It's just like how firemen run into a fire rather than away from it like the rest of people do. It's just a little chemical imbalance that allows them to do that job better than others. We do build up a little bit of a shell. Earlier in the career, it's going to be not as good at compartmentalizing, but it's your brain adapts to that. In film and television, yes, all the time I see stuff that's too emotional, or that they come across as too emotional, whereas if you can just, a good actor, you can see it in their eyes that they're upset, but they're not, exploding on screen, crying, weeping, whatever you want to call it. Um, the I was when I did that crime scene, which was like 20 years ago now. I wasn't as matter of fact as I am now, but I wasn't traumatized by it either. It was upsetting, but I was there to do a job and to make sure that this got taken care of, so that the in this case justice had already been done because he'd shot himself. But just make sure that we're recording the scene just in case maybe somebody staged it that way.
Mm.
Make sure that that's not the case. But yeah, it's just a mental. I don't know how to describe it because it comes naturally to me. Um, I think that it would be better if more cops were less emotional, more cops on screen were less emotional. Uh,
Mm.
but I understand why they do it that way because I've been an actor for 30 years too. I know how actors are. Some of them are probably holding a lot in to do it.
Mhm.
I have a
Yes.
writer friend that couldn't that only did Law and Order SVU for a year because he couldn't handle how dark it was getting. And at
Mm.
the same time, I worked with a lieutenant who had done it who was working in that unit in our department for 18 years. And it was just that, she was there to protect kids and take care of it. And that's just what she did. Um, that was more important to her than, you know, it was more important that she go into the dark to make sure that she could maybe pull some of these kids out of it and not have them experience it anymore. That
Hmm.
makes
Yeah, no, wow, thank you.
sense.
I was just thinking that you can almost equate that to an emergency room. I mean, emergency in hospital, where the nurses and doctors are confronted daily with some of the most outrageous, if you will, um, scenarios where they're seeing people come in. So they also have to have this way of compartmentalizing and not wearing their heart on their sleeve, if you will. Just making sure that they get the job done. They try to save the person or whatever it takes.
Yeah. They have the advantage of medical knowledge too. So they've got a lot of things that they're trying to keep track of in their head while they're doing it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
John, did you have another question?
Yeah. How would you go about becoming a consultant?
Oh, that's a good question. I wish I knew.
I
I'm
mean,
still,
I have military experience, and I'm sure much like a cop watching a show or a doctor or somebody, you see these guys are in the military, but their hair is super long, and it's just like, but
that's how they
but
are.
yeah.
Um,
So, I mean, I imagine you probably have to have an in already.
yeah, well, the reason I said the way I did is because I'm still trying to work my way in. Um,
Mhm.
I have my website. I have recommendations and whatnot from people I've worked with before, and I do networking events and that type of thing. When I first just started doing this, I have a friend who was recurring on the show Bosch that was working. I was working with him as an actor. Uh, sorry, he was coaching me as an actor. And when he found out I wanted to do that, he's like, well, let me talk to, the consultants we have, because he was convinced that there has to be a union or something like that, but there's not.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's a retired detective from LAPD does the same thing. He is on the WGA, the Writers Guild of America website as a consultant, but to be on their site, you have to offer what you do for free. So he asks, they can ask him like 3 to 5 questions for free, and he'll answer that. And he was like so every once in a while it'll translate into a job, but it's very rare that it does that. I'm trying to use my background as an actor and writer as well as law enforcement to make
Mhm.
it a little bit easier. But what I'm about to do actually is start doing videos like TikTok and Instagram type things where I go, well, look at this. This is wrong with this. Because a friend's like pointed out, it's like, how would they even know that they need your services? Because
Right.
again, they were like, "Oh, I know all this stuff.
Yeah.
I've watched all these movies and these TV shows." And it's like, "No, you don't understand." Um,
You were literally taught wrong.
what was his name? Jason. God, there was a firefighter that I know through online that does. If you look up Fire Department Chronicles, he used to do videos where he would green screen himself into shows, and he'd be on like Grey's Anatomy, and they would like, "Oh, they're this," and he's like, "Stop." Oh, you just killed that person, or you did this, or you did, showing how they did it wrong. And he wasn't
Jason
even,
Patton.
yes, Jason
Yeah.
Patton.
Okay.
He wasn't even looking to, he is still a firefighter paramedic. He has a side business with a coffee company. Um, but he just thought this was fun way to get attention. And now he does like real things I've seen as a paramedic, which is sometimes even funnier. But I'm going to do similar things to that. I don't want to take his thing because that's his thing. But just to let people know there is, there is, you know, uh, Same thing. My mom used to watch Quincy. She loved the show Quincy. Hated it because she was a nurse and so much stuff that they would do that was wrong. She can't watch Grey's Anatomy. ER was okay, but Grey's Anatomy drives her insane. So that would be my suggestion if you want to try and expand that. Just look for networking opportunities and ways to put yourself out there and let people know that there's maybe a service that they need.